Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Sales Manager Academy podcast. As always, I'm your host, Omar, and we talk about leadership in the boutique retail world. Specifically, if you're wondering what is boutique retail, what does that mean? Is it like a boutique clothing store? It can be. Really, what it means, it's small, more specialized locations where we happen to sell retail. So think of wireless retail locations, think of AV stores, think of appliance stores, things that are outside your traditional, normal big box retail locations, right? I know some big box retailers also have departments like that, but what you don't know is those other departments are actually companies that they've typically purchased to try to bring into their own, and then they go on and fuck things up. Uh, but let's really get back on point with what we do here. We talk about what it means to be a leader. We talk about ways to help us improve ourselves to become better leaders for our teams, to help lead our teams to success and get them to heights that they didn't believe could be possible. I'm here to help you transform the way that you lead and help you transform the way your people perform. That's the big thing that we do around here. And one of the things we're going to be talking about today, it's really three things, but we're going to be covering the toxic leadership beliefs, uh, methods of thinking, right, that we kind of hold on where it's preventing us from actually letting our people truly succeed. And you might be saying, Omar, what do you mean? Like, I tell them to do everything, I give them all the information, I push them to become better. Well, just be with me. Listen, you're going to understand what I'm talking about because I guarantee you're going to find something that relates to you and even more so to your local sales leaders. So you're going to be able to find out, like, hey, what can I do to help push my people to a new level, to better ways of performing? And that's what we're going to focus on. I mean, listen, I get it. Being a district manager, you did hard work. An area manager, regional, you did hard work to get into that role. So it's not for lack of hard work, right? Hard work doesn't fix bad thinking. If your leadership model is broken, if you're not able to get the performance consistently from your teams, your results will be too. Okay. So you start by thinking. The thoughts that you have make a difference. Listen, you don't rise to the level of your hustle. What happens is you rise or you fall to the quality of your thinking because that really controls everything that we do. So let's challenge three of the toxic ideas that many leaders hold on to that holds their teams back, right? The first one, and I hear this quite often, I've seen it, right? I've been there, I understand it, but they should just know how to sell by now. How many of you guys have people on your team that have been there for a while and you're wondering, why do they have constant up and downs on performance? They've been here for a year, for 2 years. They should know how to sell this by now. Why is this so difficult? Why they don't just get this by now? And you're probably also talking about some of your store leaders when it comes to this. Operations. Think about that. How often do you have to get, and it's typically the same either cluster of employees or individuals that you're constantly like hounding on operations, operations, operations. It's the same concept. But listen, time does not equal mastery. You could be in the same role for 10 years. It doesn't mean you've mastered the role. Hard to believe. I get it. But the reality is, skills decay without reinforcement. Just because you've been in the role, if you're not doing the same thing consistently, you're not going to master what it means. If you're not trying to improve to become a master of the craft, it's going to decay. If you're constantly moving to the new flavor of the month type of situation because your executive leadership wants you to do this now, right? Because they talk to somebody and this is a new flavor of the month. Listen, we got to focus on the basics. We have to focus on consistency. We have to focus on coaching, right? Sales is a craft. Just like any athlete, you need consistent drills. You need consistent coaching, consistent training to ensure that the muscles that you've built do not decay, right? We got to keep them fresh. So we have to run those drills. We have to run those practices consistently. Now, that doesn't mean you need to do a bunch of awkward role play sessions. I've talked about that. That's just not the most feasible thing. And there's things that aren't said that make a difference. And that's why I'm a big fan of doing visualization practices. That's why I'm a big fan of this, right? It makes a difference in the way that your teams take in the information, utilize the information, because that's the most important aspect, is being able to turn around and use that right away. That's why I'm not a fan of 8-hour training sessions. I get it. There are times when you're going to do it and it's covered some great information so that you can take away something because there's going to be change occurring. I understand where they come from, okay? But when you're trying to implement change, the research shows it does not work. It's not sustainable. There is no follow-up or follow-through on the material. And that's where everybody goes wrong with those. It's not about doing these big data dumps. It's about taking small bite-sized pieces of information and being able to use it right away. And more importantly, being able to get the feedback. And that's what the coaching sessions are so important. You have to be able to do that. That way you can correct in real time. When you don't do that, once again, you can be in the same role for 10 years and wondering why you're not a master of the craft, why you haven't moved up. It's because there's something holding you back or holding your people back. And it's typically not being able to master certain concepts, certain traits, certain uh, actions of the craft. Okay. You have to be able to push forward and you have to be able to learn because as we train up, the level of our skills become better. So when shit hits the fan, we're not having to start from all the way at the bottom. We have a better plateau. We have a better fallback level. So we know what the constant baseline performance is going to be like. And that's a hard thing for a lot of people because you might be thinking, well, they've been here for 6 months. They've been here for a year. They should know how to do this already. In a perfect world, yeah, we don't live in a perfect world. They don't have the consistent practices on this over and over and over again. And when they're not getting the consistent practices and they're not getting the feedback, they're not getting the coaching, the training, that development, it's not going to stick. Oh, but I talked about them. I talked about it last week. I talked about it last month. I talked about it at the beginning of the quarter. Great. You talked once about that. Where is the follow through? Where is the follow up? Where is the consistency as a leader? I just don't got time. Well, guess what? You're not going to be in that role for long. In wireless, you guys know this. There's a reason why there's consistent churn at the leadership level. And it's not because, oh, well, they just couldn't cut it. That's not the case. It's because there's no training and development happening. That is the main reason. You should not have to look outside the organization to be able to fill leadership roles. You do when there is no true training development occurring to be able to get your people up, to be able to really develop them. And that also means when you bring in new hires, it's very difficult to get them up to speed consistently. And that's why you have mixed results when you bring new people on board. If you're a small mom and pop shop, right? If you're within a company that has 10, 20, 50, 100 locations and you're wondering, well, yeah, it's very tough to find people to work. It's not tough. You're trying to find people that have the it factor, thinking that's going to solve your problem. If I can just find that unicorn salesperson that just has it already, that is going to be my answer to fix this team. It's going to be my answer to fix my results. It's not. When you spend time training and developing and you have an actual system in place, developed, that allows you to be able to bring on just about anybody that's coachable and has the want to perform, which, hello, opens it up to a lot of different people and allows you to be able to talk about the success that you can see and have an actual system in place to bring people on board that way. That makes a difference. Why is it harder for you to hire people than it is for people at McDonald's to hire somebody? Yeah, McDonald's might be a shit job, but they got a system. People know exactly what they're going to be doing consistently, right? But hey, you can develop that too. It's not too late to do that. You can bring people on board, you can have a system, and it starts by changing the way that you think about it, your perspective on it. So don't go about it with, they should just know how to sell this by now. Know that if that is the case, it means that there's an issue, there's a flaw with the way that I'm training my people, with the way that I'm developing, or reality check, the way I'm not developing my people. So that needs to change. And when that changes, you will see a shift. And that shift, a lot of people think that change happens over a very long period of time. Do not get me wrong. Major change does. When we're talking about organizational change, from the time that I started the change in my districts to the time it went with the entire organization nationally, it was probably about a 2 to 3 year time span. Within my organization, within my districts, within my markets, that change seemed overnight. It happened in a matter of weeks, if not a couple of months in the performance. And when it happened, it pivoted and went boom. That's what you're looking for. Because once they get it and once they get a quick taste of that success, it clicks, it makes sense. We're doing this now because this yields faster results. This is better, it's easier, it's less work. I get more money. That's the way it works. That's what you need to be able to instill in your people. It's not a, well, they should just figure it out by now, right? Or if they're not performing, the employee's the problem, the seller's the problem. They're not. Okay. The reality is you need to stop blaming the rep. Performance issues often point back to the coaching, to the clarity, the systems used, or really lack of systems used. You don't have anything in place to develop them. Well, they went through and they took their online courses. They went through 2 weeks of that and we just put them on the floor. They should know it's been a month already. Listen, when I had my stores and my district set up, I set up a 90-day training period for my new hires. That was not a probationary period. It was 90 days from start to finish. I had a system in place. I let them know your first 2 weeks on board is going to be a lot of information. You have, 40 hours of online courses that have to get done. They have to get done within X period of time, right? Within the first 2 weeks, they just got to get done, period. And then I told them, so the goal is this. Within the first 2 weeks, on top of that, this is what I expect you to do. And then I would give them a goal at 4 weeks. This is what I expect you to be able to attain. This is what our focus is going to be. So they know within the first 2 weeks, it was this. And it was something very simple and achievable, right? Uh, then the 2 weeks after that, it was easy. And then I had a goal for them at 6 weeks and 8 weeks. And then the final goal was at the end of the 90th day, the 90-day period. Newsflash. My new hires could hit all of those goals by 45 days and feel confident. It was part of a system, also a type of game, because the way they saw it was I'm ahead of schedule. Oh my God, I'm really good at this. I'm beating the schedule. You guys don't know what that feels like for people. Maybe you had an experience where you felt that you mastered something before somebody, the average person could do it. That's what it feels like to them. They've got that confidence now, and that confidence allows them to perform better, faster. And as a leader, that's what you have to do with your team. You have to set up the coaching sessions. You have to have a system in place to be able to get them to that performance level. And If you're wondering, do I have that in place? If you have to ask yourself that, obviously you know what the results are, you know what the answers are, because you find yourself maybe you don't necessarily feel that you're struggling, right? Your team's able to hit 90%, sometimes 100, 110% the goal. So you're like, yeah, I'm on top of it. But then you're also fielding off-hour calls. You're working 7 days a week. Your days off on Sunday are always filled with phone calls from stores. You're constantly having to hire new people. You have issues with operations. That's what I'm talking about. When you have a system in place, all of that goes away. So you have a better work-life balance. You have better mastery over the way that your team performs. You're not having to field as many calls off hours. It makes a difference, guys. It really does. So ask yourself, what am I not coaching clearly or consistently enough on? What can I do? If there's a KPI, if it's overall performance, right? My teams didn't have to worry about us having to run fire drills. That was a big thing. Why? Because they stayed on top of it. The store managers ended up taking ownership over the performance of the team. They didn't have to wait for me to step in. I allowed them to actually be leaders. And it was by giving them the ability to lead and letting them rise up through training and developing. And they allowed their team to be able to rise up by coaching and developing their people through training. Having a system goes a long way in making sure that your teams can all achieve success and greatness. That's what that means when you have something. And then when it's duplicatable, it's repeatable, you can take yourself out of the equation and it still continues. You won't be able to hide. I will tell you this right now. You will not be able to hide and say, well, I don't got to ever show up. No, you still have to inspect what you expect, just like anything else. You got to make sure things are good. It's like a football team. Yeah, you got the offensive and the defensive coaches. You still have the head coach. The head coach is still going to make sure everything is still in line so that we're on the same page with everything. If there's any changes need to be made, we can make them. But that's the big thing. That is what we have to focus on. That's what we need to push on. Makes a difference in your team's performance, in the way that they're able to achieve their goals, in the way that they're able to perform. And it means that you end up doing less actual work as a leader. You got into a role as a DM, as an area manager, as a regional, because hard work, yes, but that can only take you so far. You have to be able to bring that change. And believe it or not, oftentimes there has to be change at different levels of leadership because old sets, right? Old mindsets are very rigid. They don't change. So it becomes tough. And that's why it's easier to bring change to an organization from the field up than it is from the outside in. Okay. Yeah, they might get somebody, a consultant or something to do something. I've done that. I've been in an organization where they spent millions of dollars and McKinsey come in. Technically, I'm McKinsey certified as a coach, as a trainer, right? And they're bullshit. Not long after it, performance will decline because it's a hot ticket. All eyes are on the project. But once they're gone, there is no follow-up. There is no system in place that's actually been developed to continue the success, right? But when it comes from the field up, you see the results right away. It's been established. You see the change. You've developed multiple people that have that already, have that knowledge, that training, and can also implement it themselves. So they start getting promoted. They start going to different areas. They start utilizing it. Now you start to see the change faster. Why are these locations, why are these markets performing so much better than everybody else? Well, they came from this market. Oh, snap. We need to find out what they're doing and bring that in. And that's what that means. It makes a big difference in the way performance is attained, achieved, and the way that it's ultimately spread among the organization. Now, as a leader, you need to understand that you don't have all the answers. That is a very important thing. New leaders struggle with this aspect the most, I believe, because as a leader, you expect people to look up to you, you expect them to turn to you for answers. They're going to ask you a bunch of questions, and you feel that you have to have a response for everything. And the reality is, you don't. It You do not have an answer for everything. You should know how to be able to find the resources for them. And that's what you have to develop in your team. Because when they turn to you to find all the answers, to direct them, to fix things, to solve issues for them, you're constantly being blown up on your days off, on your off hours. And your team is like, oh, well, I'm just going to reach out to them. Something simple that they could have figured out. But because they're so used to having to rely on you to solve things, you become the bottleneck for your team, which yeah, you're pissed about getting calls after hours, stuff like that. Like you can figure this out on your own, yada yada. Yeah, that is a making of your own design. Okay. But you don't need to go through that burnout. You don't need to create that dependency on yourself, right? The worst thing, I've had this happen before when I took trips to Mexico, when I first started as a leader and getting those fucking calls when I'm literally out of the country from both my team and my leadership, right? The people above me. And it's like, guys, I'm on fucking vacation. Okay. That's, it's annoying. But that's what you want to avoid. That's what happens when you make yourself the bottleneck in things. So you have to learn as you build your system that you're going to remove yourself as being the bottleneck. You're going to allow your people to start solving issues. You're going to give them the ability to be able to find the resources and connect them. Let them know, like, hey, you know what? I don't always have the answers. This is what I do. And you show them how to be able to get them, how to build those relationships as well with the people at the home office in different markets and different districts. It makes a difference in their growth because now they also feel more confident in being able to solve things on their own without you always being involved. And your local leaders, your store managers, your assistant managers, they're going to love it because it also means people are less likely to bypass them on anything. They're going to ask them, right, or run something by them instead of reaching out to you consistently. And it's nice. I will say it's also kind of sad because you kind of feel a little bit more lonelier because, right, you're not getting those phone calls all the time. So that's kind of like the only thing that I will tell you, you will miss, uh, but you also won't miss. Uh, and by helping them to learn to ask better questions and really problem solve, that also goes back to their performance level. It goes back to their level of confidence in what they can achieve and what they can do. It makes a huge difference, guys. As a leader, that's what you want to focus on. That's where you want to bring the performance, what you want to do. And it makes a difference. You will have a happier, more livelier team performing better, doing so much more than what you could have thought possible when you first started. Okay. It's the craziest thing. I've seen performance go like that. I've seen performance double, not just in a store, but across the entire market. I'm not talking about over, a year, a couple of years. I'm talking about, but like almost instant. After a few weeks of being consistent with the approach, boom. And then once your team starts really getting focused in and they start actually applying it, start using the information, the trainings, the coaching, and they become more open to the training and the development, it goes from, if you're thinking in graph, kind of like going up to boom, right? I've seen performance double in times when it was tough, right? You're talking reduced foot count, foot traffic into locations. There isn't as many sales going on in locations. It is stuff that makes a difference because you're taking the time to do it, and it does pay off as a leader. If you're looking for the payout, if you're looking for the payoff, that's going to be it. Coaching, training, and developing is what's going to get you there. There is no quick fix, but it's going to feel like a quick fix, especially when you look back and you're like, damn, all that happened in that short period of time. Okay. So, guys, fix your thinking and your team can follow. I'll leave it there. I want to say thanks, as always, for joining me on another episode of the Sales Manager Academy podcast. I'm your host, Omar, and I'll catch you on the next one.